Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wandering Through the Big Book, session number 50, 50. We've been doing this for a year now, and I think we only took 3 days off. So we're going to start with the opening words. We've got the readers ready, and the words are in the chat. So here we go. Welcome to this session of Wandering Through the Big Book. This is not a meeting of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. There is no group conscience, no seventh tradition, no requirement for membership. Everyone is welcome. Our primary purpose is taking an in-depth look at the book, Alcoholics Anonymous, in order to deepen and strengthen our own recovery, to try to help others to do the same, and to try to become trusted servants of our fellowship. We are seeking conscious contact by trusting God, cleaning house, and helping others. And we're trying to improve that conscious contact by practicing steps 10, 11, and 12 every day, and applying the spiritual principles we are learning to the details of our ordinary day-to-day lives. We will begin this gathering with a moment of silence to reflect on why we are here. Sorry. Okay, and now we're going to do these readings adapted from the big book. And number one, Buck.
I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through and through. And though perhaps you came to scoff, you will remain to pray. Page 0, right before page 1.
Okay, thank you, Buck. And Christina, number 2.
No attitude of holier than thou, no fees to pay, no axes to grind, no people to please, no lectures to be endured. These are conditions we have found most effective, page 18. But be quick to see where religious people are right, page 87.
Thank you, Christina. And Cheyenne, number 3.
If you are seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe you have but two alternatives. One is to go on to the bitter end, blotting out of your conscience how miserable you really are, page 25, and the other to ask our Creator each morning in meditation to show us the way of patience, tolerance, and kindness and love, page 83.
Thank you, Cheyenne.
Oh, I think we're back. We back?
We're back.
Are we back?
I think so.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Cheyenne. Amy, number 4.
Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will for us into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. This is the proper use of the will, page 85.
Thank you, Amy. And Jason, number 5.
Just to the extent that I humbly rely on God and do as I think God would have me do, will I be enabled to experience spiritual serenity right in the midst of the human calamity. Page 68. Head in the clouds and feet firmly on the ground. Page 130.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And I'm sorry that the internet cut out there a moment. Let's see, I want to mute everybody. Okay. So this is step 9, part 1. We're going to go through the book, the pages on amends, and then next week we're going to talk about the promises compared to the bedevilments, and just a final thing on self-condemnation, because I know for me that's been a major obstacle to overcome, and I just want to hit it one more time. Okay, so step number 9, people like to point out that there are 30 pages between the bedevilments on page 52 and the 9th step promises, which are on pages 83, 84. I guess it's a little more than 30 pages, maybe 32 pages. And amends take up a quarter of those pages. So, the book starts moving pretty fast, especially when you get to into action. How it works is steps 3 and 4. And then we get to into action, and in pages, what is it, 72 to 88, we get, I think, 7 steps. Or maybe it's 5 steps, I don't know. But at any rate, a quarter of those pages are on amends. So not that number of pages equates to importance, I'm not trying to say that, but that it's a significant and a very challenging aspect of our process. And personally, I haven't found it in the reading that I've done on being willing to grow along spiritual lines. Just never found anything like it. And I know for me personally that George will remember this. You know, I was eager to get to step 3 to just feel like I was moving. So I get to step 4, and George is sponsoring me, and he'd come to town usually, well, maybe a couple of times a month, and we'd meet, and how you coming with that resentment list? And then I'd start talking all my excuses why I hadn't come up with a resentment list. All I'm asking for is a resentment. I mean, you know, and it took me a good year and a half to come up with a resentment list. And I'm a very resentful person. So it's not like they weren't available. And I finally did it by going to my phone directory, just by looking, you know, going A to Z and looking for names. And if I felt that sort of clinch in my gut, and I've thought about that a lot. And I know we talk about willingness to go to any length, that part of making a third step decision is the decision to go to any length, which really means that when resistance shows up, I'm not going to cave into it. I'm going to somehow remind myself that I agreed to do this thing through. And you'll remember back when we were talking on step 3, how much it was, at least for me, what happens when I get resistant to going to any length is I just try to remind myself of how badly I felt when I came into AA. And the fastest way for me to do that is to name the hideous 4 horsemen that are there at the beginning of a vision for you, I think. Terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. And I remember how frightened I really was that my life had broken down so horribly. Bewildered that I just didn't have any idea what to do. Frustrated that everything I had tried to do, just even to stop drinking, had not worked. And finally, that despair of no hope, which is an awful place to be. And it served me well to this day when my ego seems to be happy and pleased with what it calls its life, you know, and I think I don't want to go to that meeting, or I don't want to meet with so-and-so, or I don't want to read, I don't want to meditate today, I don't want to pray today, whatever it is, you know. I just, I swear, in the same way that red light, green light has become an effective tool for me, remembering those hideous 4 horsemen, and just asking a simple question: are you doing better today than you were back then? And when the answer comes clear as a green light, you bet your ass I'm doing better today than I was back then. Then I really personally go to the first paragraph of step 10, which says continue, 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 continue. 4 times he uses the word continue in the first paragraph of step 10. Don't let up. Don't get complacent. So I'm kind of off the track here, but so at any rate, I know for me that there was an amend that I never wanted to make, and that was to my ex-wife, the mother of my children, and I think my mind decided we can't go there. So let's not even get started. Don't you get going on this resentment list, because if you do, they're gonna suck you in, and before you know it, you're gonna be challenged with making this amend. And so I had no interest. And I remember also kneeling by a motel bedroom in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, an hour before meeting my ex-wife to make this amend, and realizing in no uncertain terms that I had not done this. I could not claim credit for being willing to go meet this woman and try to make up for the harm that I had done, regardless of how wrong or dysfunctional she may have been. And it took me a while to get there. You know, I would hear people talking on amends, and they would say things like, well, she didn't deserve that, you know, and my little mind goes, yes, she did. You know, she did deserve that. And it just like resentment, you know, I gotta be kidding myself that resenting you is a good idea. I mean, it's a level of denial that we've talked about a lot. I am unhappy, but it's not my fault. It's your fault. If you behave differently, I could be happy and you could be a better person. You know, the first level of dishonesty and resentment. So at any rate, but then what I heard you all say was whether or not she deserved it, I wouldn't want to be treated that way. When I got that, when I understand if somebody treated me the way I treated her, I'd go nuts. Then I had something. I had some motivation to work on. So today we're talking about amends. We're going to be looking through the book, and just a reminder, because in a couple of weeks we're going to get going on step 10, and we do all of this. I heard somebody say this the other day, just to get to the starting line. And just got to remind you, you know, we do 4 through 9 to get to the starting line. The starting line is 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis. We're just trying to get there. It's not like when we get through amends, everything's wonderful. We're trying to get to life on a spiritual basis as our, you know, I'd be doing like this, but except for this chaos. So I got it. And I'm not as good with this one. The starting line is life on a spiritual basis as our only alternative. This is big. Our only alternative to life under the influence of our human selves, our bodies and our minds. And I know I probably say too much, what a kick I'm getting out of these spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius, because he, you know, right at the beginning, he says, well, you go to school for your mind and you go to the gym for your body. This is what we do for the spirit. You know, if you'll go through this, your spirit can come alive and be a major part of your life. And I absolutely, I feel I'm in the best period of my life, and I'm old. And I feel it's because I am not living under the tyranny of my body and my mind. I don't have to believe my own thinking anymore. You know, it's on page 49. Rather than consider myself an intelligent agent of my creator, I believe my own thinking. And they tell us that that will be vain if that's what we do. I don't have to believe my own thinking anymore. It's just interesting with this thing, you know, because I imagine I've been having some back pain. So of course, don't you know, I'm convinced I've broken my back. I was all ready to call up the doctor, but my wife's a nurse, and she, well, let me look at it. And she couldn't see any sign of whatever. I mean, my mind just imagines the worst. If I can't find something, I start thinking about who stole it. It's just ludicrous. So this thing is about life on a spiritual basis as our only alternative to living life on a human basis, which means subject to the obsessions and the compulsions of my mind and my body. And also subject to my self-condemnation that we'll be talking about next week, I hope. Okay, so anyway, we're trying to get to the starting line, which is 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis. Life on a spiritual basis is our only alternative to the lives we've been leading. And I am just so grateful to Bill and Bob and all the people that came before and all the people that came after, that we have this way, we have these promises, we have all this stuff, we have our meetings and our one-on-ones and our the literature, the big book, all this stuff. And we're taught, you know, I love the first reading that we read, you know, Silkworth, right before page 1. We haven't even gotten to page 1. And Silkworth gives us the answer to the whole problem. I earnestly advise every one of you guys to read the book through. That means read the book through. And though you come in here with an attitude of contempt prior to investigation, you will stay and learn how to pray. This is a medical guy, clear as a bell. I think he was a psychiatrist, I'm not sure, but clear as a bell about the body and the mind. And the first one to say, your guys' bodies are different. You process alcohol different, you know. And he's saying, here's my advice. I earnestly advise you to understand what this book is saying and to learn how to pray. And everything that we do involves prayer. Okay, let's see. Whoops, what did I do with it? Oh, here we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go through the book starting on page 76 and just talk about some things that the book says. And here we go. Right in the first paragraph, now we need more action, without which we find faith without works is dead. So now we're really getting into, look at steps 8 and 9. They don't really separate it. It's not like you can say, you know, here's 8 and here's 9. We have a list of all persons we've harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. Well, that's not quite true. We got this list. That doesn't mean we're willing. In fact, that's the work of step 8 is becoming willing and understanding that when I encounter that resistance, the things that I need to do to become willing, whether it's the hideous 4 horsemen or red light, green light, or whatever works for you. You know, that's one of our fundamental principles. none of us can ever tell another what you should do. All we can do is tell you what we had to do, which really means what worked for us. That's all. So let's see. If we haven't the will to, we attempt to sweep away the debris which is accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. You know, we are extreme examples of self-will run riot, and we don't think so. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask. At every time it says ask, it means pray until it comes. And don't forget, you agreed way back there in step 3 that you're trying to grow along spiritual lines. And so you're going to go through steps 4 through 9 in an effort to do that. And I'm adding just to get to the starting line, just to get to where we begin. Agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. Perhaps there are some misgivings. Of course there are some misgivings, all kinds of misgivings. As we look over the list of business acquaintances and friends we have hurt, we feel reluctant about going to some of them on a spiritual basis. Let us be assured. So now they're going to go through this thing about, you know, getting into the prize ring and leading with the chin. And, you know, I'm walking hand in hand with God here, and I'm coming to you on behalf of God himself. And I'm going to tell you about what's happened for me. And this is saying, no. You know, this is, I love that we read head in the clouds and feet on the ground, and balancing those two. So, you know, head in the clouds is we're allowing God to act through us, but feet on the ground means we are dealing with life on life's terms and all of the challenges and difficulties that presents. And we're promised on page 68 that if I humbly rely on my Creator and I do behave as I think my Creator wants me to behave, I will experience the calamity with serenity. It'll be okay. I'll realize I am growing as a spiritual being, having a human experience. But amends is feet on the ground. You know, amends is rendering unto Caesar. Amends is going to people that we've had difficulty with. And remember, number one bedevilment, trouble with personal relationships. So the amend part is where feet are on the ground, and our head in the clouds is not the important part. It's going to say, I think on the next page, our man is sure to be impressed with a sincere desire to set right the wrong. He's the other person, not just he, the other person is going to be more interested in a demonstration of goodwill, the opposite of resentment, of goodwill, than talk of our spiritual discoveries. I think it's critical that we don't have to bring God into it. But all we need to do is, do you remember this? When I did that, I don't feel good about it. That's not the person I want to be. So I'm here now to try to declare to you that I'm going to try to be a different person by doing these things. And then it's going to run through a bunch of different situations and give us some advice on things to do. So, but I do want to point out at the top of page 77, what I think is a awesome statement. At the moment, we're trying to put our lives in order, but this is not the be all and end all. We're just trying to get to the starting line. I say again, our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. You know, it's like, I don't know how long I failed to take in that line, my life's all about me. What do you mean fit myself to be of maximum service to God? Which of course is what St. Ignatius says right at the start of the thing. That's your real purpose. That's your primary purpose. And I say again, I'm sure I sound like a broken record. Primary purpose to me is everything. When I am clear about my primary purpose, I can experience the calamity with serenity. When I'm confused about my primary purpose, then I'm all involved with the outcome of events and who's doing what or saying what or how this is going to work out or whatever. Primary purpose is key. And this is saying at this point that our primary purpose is to fit ourselves, change ourselves, strengthen our spiritual selves in a way that we can be of maximum service. And it's going to say some pages later at the end of step 10, there is only one thing you're actually supposed to be thinking about all day long. And that is not about me. Asking the question, how can I best serve thee? How can whatever it is that I'm going through, whatever situation I'm in, how can I best serve thee? That's what it says. And you get to 11, and 11 saying, I am not sure what my primary purpose is. Will you tell me? Asking only for knowledge of why am I here? And what do you want me to do? And the answer I most often get is, I don't care. But I want you to be patient and tolerant and kind and loving. And trying to think about the bigger picture instead of your tiny little picture. Okay. In the middle of 77, we don't use this as an excuse for shying away from the subject of God. This is good advice. You know, it's not that we're trying to avoid talking about it. We're just not gonna mess the thing up. This is feet on the ground. This is one human being to another, and we're talking about things that we want to do to make up for things that we did that we don't feel good about. Then they're going to, next several paragraphs, each time they will give you a subject. So the subject of this one is the question of how to approach the man we hated will arise. And later down there, where does it say? It's much easier to go to a, of course, I can't find, my eyes are racing around. Somewhere it's going to say easier to go to a friend than to an enemy, but oh yeah, it's harder to go to an enemy than to a friend, but we find it much more beneficial. You know, when you're able to solve these big ones, it's going to be much more beneficial for me to get to a helpful and forgiving spirit. You know, the self-condemnation is where I'm not able to do that with myself. I'm not able to look at my own life with a helpful and forgiving spirit, which really means I'm hung up on the human part of my life. I think is a way of avoiding the spiritual part of my life. I'll get there. Under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. We simply, we simply tell him that we will never get over our drinking, which really means our obsessive, selfish self-centeredness. We will never get over our drinking until we have done our utmost to straighten out the past, to get over our self-condemnation by becoming different people, reacting differently to our lives. We are there to sweep off our side of the street, realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so, never trying to tell the other person what they should do. We're not discussing their faults. We stick to our own. Oh, look at this. If our manner is calm, frank, and open, good things are going to happen. And here's a promise, a 9-step promise, another one. Feuds of years standing melt away in an hour. Wow, wouldn't that be wonderful? Resentment of years standing melt away. And then later on, that same paragraph, it doesn't matter if they totally reject it. We've done our part. We've made our demonstration, done our part. Water over the dam. Now they're going to shift from hating people to owing people money. And part of the advice they're going to give is don't show up with a promise, show up with a check. You know, this is important. Don't go there and promise that you're going to do something. Show up with feet on the ground means a check. It doesn't mean a promise. Head in the clouds, that's a promise. Arranging the best deal we can, you know, whether it's internal revenue or a previous employer or whatever it is. You know, you hear stories about people going back to a store where they stole stuff, and the store people don't know what to do with them. And they'll wind up in the business office, and the business, oh no, you'll mess everything. You'll mess up my books if you just give me money. So they wind up working something different out, okay, let's see. Arranging the best deal we can. Oh, and just bear in mind, we've got financial creditors and we also have emotional creditors, and that's, you know, that can be a little more challenging, where you owe people not on a financial level, but on an emotional level. It's just something to think about. Then they're going to shift from owing money to a criminal offense. And there's some key lines in here. Most of us have done that sort of thing, whatever it is. You know, we've all got some things we've done. And then they start talking about divorce and remarriage. I'm on page 79 toward the top now. Although these reparations take innumerable forms, there's some general principles. So that's what they're going to do now, throw some general principles at us. Reminding ourselves that we have decided to go to any lengths to find a spiritual experience. We ask, means pray, that we be given strength and direction, knowledge and power. It's this way all the way through, given mental knowledge and emotional, physical power to actually do this stuff. No matter what the personal consequences may be. We are willing, we have to be. And then some stuff around relationships, that we're not to be the hasty and foolish martyr. And then they go into a situation where a man's remarried and hasn't paid the alimony, and the ex-wife is suing him, and they're talking about that you've got to try to have the big picture in mind. It'd be great if he shows up and says, okay, here I am, put me in jail, but that's not going to help the big picture. So we suggested he write his first wife, admitting his faults and asking forgiveness. So this idea of letter writing is just a wonderful technique in amends, because the beauty of writing is you don't have to send it, you know, but the act of writing helps you clarify in your own mind what you've done and what you need to do. And in this case, he also sent a small amount of money. That's the same thing they were saying before. Don't write in the letter, I'm going to try to give you some money. You send some money. And they talk about the whole thing working out. Okay, I'm on to page 80. Oh, and this is about where we might implicate other people. We secure their consent, and they say there are a couple of things involved here. Before taking drastic action which might implicate other people, we secure their consent we've obtained permission, if we have obtained permission and have consulted with others and have asked God to help, we will be gratified with the results. So, and then they do this story that is quite a story when you read it slowly, and what this guy had to go through and the challenges of doing that. I'm in the middle of page 80. He felt that he had done a wrong he could not possibly make right. If he opened up this old affair, he was going to destroy his own business, his own partner, disgrace his family, and take away their meaning of livelihood. Wow, couldn't be any worse than that. But then he does this in the bigger picture. He consults with his wife and his partner. And he comes to the conclusion that it's better to take those risks than to stand before his creator guilty of such ruinous slander. It's quite a statement. He saw that he had to place the outcome in God's hands, or he would soon start drinking again. And all would be lost anyhow. So he goes to church, which he hadn't done in a long time. And after the sermon, he stands up and makes this whole admission, and it's favorably received. Then they're going to shift into domestic troubles. And of course, this is, difficulty with personal relationships once again. And talks about I'm at the top of page 81. After a few years with an alcoholic, a wife gets worn out, resentful, uncommunicative. I mean, this is tough to read some of this stuff when you realize it. Whatever the situation, we usually have to do something about it. Let's see, we feel we ought to say to her that we have no right to involve another person. We're sorry for what we've done, and God willing, it shall not be repeated. More than that, we cannot do. Though there may be justifiable exceptions, and though we wish to lay down no rule of any sort, we have often found this the best course to take. And that's what I was trying to say earlier, that in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, we do not have rules. Although I think I could make a case that, well, we did that. We did the AA commandments, the steps turned into commandments. But the only thing that matters is what works for you. What is effective for you and your ability to evaluate that. Our design for living is not a one-way street. At the bottom of page 81, good for the wife is for the husband. I'm on page 82. Perhaps there are some cases where the utmost frankness is demanded. No outsider can appraise this stuff. It may be that both will decide that the way of good sense and loving kindness is a big word in the mindfulness movement. Each might pray about it. There's prayer again, showing up again, having the other person's happiness utmost in mind. Well, that's a switch for alcoholics, My personal happiness is the only thing I got in mind. Sometime I'm in the middle of page 82. Sometimes we hear an alcoholic say the only thing he needs to do is to keep sober. The primary purpose of a meeting is to keep sober and help another alcoholic achieve sobriety. That is the primary purpose of a meeting. And as long as it meets that primary purpose, I have no complaints. The primary purpose of the steps is to have a spiritual awakening so that I can carry a message and practice principles. And they're going to say this now. We got to keep sober. Talks about passing all understanding is the patience. It's not just mothers and wives, it's fathers and husbands too, have had with alcoholics. Had this not been so, many of us would have no homes today or would perhaps be dead. It's important that we recognize how difficult we've been in these different situations. I love this. Alcoholic is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. But of course, he doesn't think so. Hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead, affections are uprooted, selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. And then what do we say? We feel a man unthinking when he says sobriety is enough. Sobriety is not enough. It's a prerequisite, but it's not enough. And then the guy saying, "Oh, don't see anything the matter here. I'm not drinking. Ain't it grand that I've stopped?" So, so let me just see if there's anything else I want to point out, and I'm just saving 83 and 84 for next week. Although I will point out, so I can point it out again next week, at the top of page 83, in that first paragraph, at the end of that first paragraph, is another statement that I think is our goal. This is the starting line. So we clean house with the family. It means clean house in our whole lives. This is step 9. And then we ask each morning, this is 10, 11, and 12 every day. We ask each morning in meditation that our Creator, acknowledging that I'm here to play the role I've been assigned. I didn't create myself. This is a big deal. Asking each morning in meditation, not just while I'm driving to work, that our Creator show us the way, show me and give me the power, both knowledge and power, show me the way of patience and tolerance and kindness and love, because most all of us, our character defects are the precise opposite. Impatience, intolerance, which means for me, judgmentalism, how hugely judgmental I am about everything, which I think is the way I apologize for God. When we read through that, it's also on page 68. We never apologize for God. I think my judgmentalism is how I do that. So let's see, I'm getting off. So impatience, intolerance, unkindness, resentment is a form of unkindness, and fear, being afraid of everything. So it's just a wonderful, I oftentimes say, relieve me of the bondage of self and show me the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. I'm still trying to just make sure looks good. Okay, so thank you all for paying attention. We're going to stop and have some open conversation, and I'm going to gong this gong, and then Buck's gonna stop the recording, and we'll see. So next week, step 9, part 2. Thank you very much.